Senator, thank you so much for taking some time to talk with us.
Thanks for coming here to my office.
You're a Republican, and during President Obama's first term, you were in the House, and over the past 4 years, you've been in the Senate. What differences do you anticipate now that a Republican is going to be president?
Well, I think that the president will now sign the legislation we pass a little more often. President Obama vetoed legislation that we passed, and having a Republican now in the White House and having a Republican House and Senate, it's easier to pass legislation. So I think we'll have better success at moving the bills that we want to move. I hope that's the case.
What are some of the differences between being a representative and a senator?
Well, the first one is a senator has a 6-year term. That's a wonderful thing. You don't have to run every 2 years. But in the Senate also this week, right before the inauguration, we're very busy vetting the president's nominees for his cabinet. That's a responsibility only the Senate has, not the House. Approving federal judges, the president's cabinet, ambassadors to foreign countries. Those are things that the Senate does and not the House. And also the Senate, because it requires 60 votes to move legislation, you work across the aisle more. Republicans and Democrats have to work together more in the Senate, and frankly, I like that.
And you serve on several Senate committees. Which one is your favorite?
My favorite is the Foreign Relations Committee, by far. Dealing with foreign policy, traveling overseas, those issues, they interest me a lot, having lived overseas myself. And so that's the most enjoyable committee. Judiciary Committee is important for Arizona as well, because immigration goes through the Judiciary Committee, and approving judges is in that committee as well. So I like that one, but Foreign Relations is my favorite.
Now, after your high school graduation, you spent some time in Southern Africa and later returned to start a foundation there. You serve as chairman of the Subcommittee on African Affairs, and I'm just wondering, how did your initial experience when you were probably around my age shape your worldview?
Well, I served in South Africa for 2 years and then went back for another year in Namibia. And I fell in love with Africa, and I've enjoyed the experience of living overseas. One thing it does is give you a greater appreciation for what we have here and the freedoms that we enjoy here. And sometimes we take that for granted. I was in Namibia when they had their first elections ever, and I think 98% of the population voted. Sometimes here, only about half of those who are registered to vote, so far less than half of the population even bothers to vote. And if you live overseas, you appreciate having your voting franchise a little more.
You grew up on a cattle ranch in Snowflake. Now, I'm not sure what kind of chores you had there, but I'm guessing at some point you did some pretty nasty cleanup work. Now, while you were shoveling stuff, did you ever in your wildest dreams think you'd become a United States Senator?
Never. In fact, I was in my hometown just last week in Snowflake, where I grew up, and visited the barn, and where I shoveled a lot of manure and milked cows just about every morning of my life. So I never thought I would be doing this. And sometimes I feel like I'm shoveling manure. It's just a different kind. But it is nice, to shower in the morning rather than the evening. That's a difference.
All right, thank you so much for your time. It was an honor to meet you.
Great to meet you, Alexis.